Hello. In this video, I read out the Japanese folktales in English. I would be happy if you could press the channel subscription and thumbs up now. Let's begin. Once upon a time, there was a king who could fulfill any wish he had. He had many beautiful princesses. Among them, the youngest princess was the most beautiful, and even the sun, who knew everything about the world, looked at her every day and was amazed. Near the king's castle, there was a lush forest, and under an old Japanese quince tree, a beautiful spring gushed forth. On hot summer days, the princess would often go to the forest and sit down by the spring to rest. Then, whenever she got bored, she would take out a golden ball, throw it high and catch it in her hands, and it was the most fun game she had ever played with. One day, when the princess came to this forest, as she was playing, tossing the ball as she usually did, the ball slipped out of her hands and fell, rolling into the spring. The princess was shocked, and watched the ball's whereabouts, but it sank into the water and she couldn't find it. The spring was very deep, and no matter how hard she looked, she couldn't see the bottom. The princess became sad and began to cry. As she continued to cry, her voice got louder and louder, and she no longer knew what to do with herself. While the princess was crying like this, a voice called out to her from somewhere. "Princess, what's wrong, princess? If you cry like that, even the stones will cry out of pity for you." Thinking, the princess looked towards the source of the voice. There, a frog, with its bloated, nasty head sticking out of the water, was looking in her direction. "Ah, it was you, slimy little thing in the water, that said what just now?" the princess said, wiping away tears. "The reason I'm crying is because I dropped my golden ball into the spring. Don't cry anymore. I'll do what you want with you. So, you'll find the ball for me?" "Yes, I'll find it for you. But if I find it and bring it back to you, what will you give me as a reward?" "My dear little frog," the princess said, "give me anything you want, even the kimono I'm wearing, or a shining pearl, or a beautiful jewel, or even a golden crown." "No, I don't want any of that. But if you take a liking to me, and make me your constant friend, and let me sit by your table, and eat all I want from your golden plate, and drink from your little cup, and sleep at night beside your little boy, then I will find a golden ball for you out of the water," said the frog. "Yes, that's fine, that's fine. If you can only bring me the golden ball, then I'll promise you anything you ask," the princess replied. As he said this, he thought to himself, how shameless to try to join the human community. What an idiot. But the frog, just as he had promised, dives into the water. After a while, it hops up with the golden ball in its mouth. Then, saying, "I've found it," he put the ball in the grass. However, as soon as the princess grabbed the ball, without saying a word of thanks, she jumped back. The frog cried out, "Wait, wait. Take me with you. I can't spend that much time with you." But no matter how loudly the frog was yelling behind her, it was no use. The princess, it seemed, didn't hear it at all, and ran off into the house, completely forgetting about the frog. The frog had no choice but to hide, and dived back into the source of the spring. The next day, the princess was sitting at the dinner table with the king and all the rest of his servants, eating a feast from a golden plate, when she heard the sound of someone coming up the marble steps outside. And when she reached the top, she heard a knock on the door. "The king's princess, the youngest daughter, please open this door." The princess got up and went to see who it was, and when she opened the door, the frog from yesterday was sitting there, flat out. The princess was startled, slammed the door shut, and returned to her seat as if she hadn't heard anything. But she was extremely worried. The king could see that the princess's heart was pounding, and asked, "My grandmother, why are you so nervous? Is there a great demon outside the door, trying to kidnap you?" Quote, "Oh, that's not it," the princess replied. "I'm not a demon like the great monk. But your evil frog has come. And what does that frog want to do to you?" "Well, father, here's what it is. Yesterday, I was playing at the usual spring in the forest, and my golden ball rolled into the water. So I started crying, and a frog came out and retrieved it for me. Then, as the frog kept asking me to help him, I promised him that I'd be his friend. I never expected that the frog would come crawling out of the water. And just like that, he came and asked to be let in." At that moment, there was a knock on the door of the room. Then, he called out in a loud voice, "Littlest princess, please open the door. You remember what we promised yesterday by the cold spring. Littlest princess, please open the door." The king then said, "That's your fault. Once you promise, you must keep it. Come on, go quickly, and open the door." The princess reluctantly stood up and opened the door. In an instant, the frog hopped in, and followed her, hopping up to the chair. The frog squatted down there, looking up, and said, "Please let me sit on that chair, too." As the princess fidgeted, her father again told her to do as the frog said. The princess had no choice but to put the frog on a chair. Then the frog said again, "Please, put me on the table." The princess put the frog on the table, and this time she said, "Now move that golden plate all the way over to me, so we can both eat together." The princess did as the frog said. And really, while the frog was munching away, slurping and munching with relish, the princess found it hard to choke on every bite. After the frog had eaten as much as it could, it pushed its stomach forward and said, "Oh, my stomach is bloated and I am sleepy. Princess, please take me to your room. I want to sleep peacefully inside your adorable silk man." The princess could bear it no more and began to sob. It was no wonder the princess was sad, seeing as how the slimy, squelching, naughty frog wanted to sleep inside your beautiful man. The king then said again, "Do you have anything to cry about? It is wrong for anyone to ignore someone who has helped them when they are in trouble." The princess, looking very displeased, gently picked up the frog with the tip of her finger, carried it upstairs, and gently placed it in a corner. Then she went to bed by herself. However, the frog immediately came crawling out and said, "Oh, I'm so tired, so tired. I want to go to bed quickly and comfortably. Come on, let me up there, or I'll tell my father." This made the princess very angry. So she suddenly picked up the frog and slammed it against the wall with all her might. "Now, you can sleep comfortably. There's no such thing as a disgusting frog. Anyway, what do you think?" As soon as the frog rolled onto the floor, it was no longer a frog, but was transformed into the most beautiful, kind-eyed prince in the world. Then, at the will of the princess's father, this prince became the princess's friend and son-in-law. Then the prince once again told his own story, saying that he had been cursed by an evil witch and turned into an ugly frog, but that no one could save him from the fountain and turn him back into a human being except the king's princess. So he said that he intended to return to his own country the next morning, the two of them together. And so they rested comfortably. And the next morning, the sun was smiling as it woke them both up, and a carriage with 8 white horses drove in. Each horse had white ostrich feathers on its head and was dragging a golden chain. Behind the carriage stood the young king's servant. This was Loyal Henry. Loyal Henry had 3 iron bands wrapped around his chest. This was because he was so sad that his lord had been turned into a frog that his chest felt like it was going to swell, so he put the bands on to hold it down. Now that the dear king had returned to his original form, a carriage with 8 horses came immediately to pick him up today. The faithful Heinrich helped them into the carriage, and as he stood tall at the back of it, he was overwhelmed with joy at the thought of his master's return to the world. Just as the carriage had started to move forward, there was a snap, snap, behind the king's ear. The young king looked back and said, "Heinrich, the carriage will break." "No, no, my lord, it is not a carriage. It is a ring that has been fastened to the carriage's breast. My lord, it is screaming, and it is the ring that has been forced to hold down my breast, which is about to burst, when I am jumping in the spring." But there was another snap, and the young king feared that the carriage would break every time. But it was because Heinrich's closed heart had opened up, because his master had returned to being human and was about to spend happy days, and the sound of his chest swelling and exploding was the sound of his heart exploding. That's that.